All right. We would like to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to come to address the board this evening. And before I call the public hearing to order, Ms. Hill would like to say something.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Biggs. We have two public hearings scheduled for this evening. We're then going to have a budget work session at our regular meeting on April the 8th, and then a special meeting on April the 15th that is scheduled to have the tax rate and budget approved that night. We may have to do that at a meeting after that based on what comes from the state budget. And our first public hearing tonight is on our tax rate, which for fiscal year 25, the advertised tax rate is 75 cents per $100 of real estate assessed value. And just as a reminder, that rate could be approved at a lower amount, but unless there is another advertisement of a rate and another public hearing, it could not be approved at a higher rate. And then our second public hearing will be on the budget, which the advertised budget is $254,607,161. I also wanted to mention that we had some slides that were looping before the presentation. They'll be available on the YouTube channel with the streaming of this meeting, and also they'll be on our website at montva.com/budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I would like to call this public hearing on April 4th, 2024 to order for the purpose of receiving our citizens' comments on the county's advertised proposed real estate tax rate of 75 cents per $100 of assessed value. The real estate tax rate in the current fiscal year is 70 cents per $100 of the assessed value. As Ms. Hill stated, in order for the board to consider a real estate tax rate above the 75 cents, the board would be required to re-advertise and hold another public hearing. A second public hearing will be held at the close of this hearing regarding the advertised fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. A sign-up sheet was made available before the meeting for citizens to sign up to speak. I will call the name of a speaker and the next speaker on the list who should also come forward and be prepared to speak. Following the speakers that have signed up, members from the audience may come forward to speak. Please come forward to the speaker's podium at the front of the room and state your name and the area of the county where you reside. You will have 4 minutes to speak. At the end of 3 minutes, you will see a yellow reminder light appear on the box on the podium. At 4 minutes, a red light will signal that your time is up. Please address your comments to the chair and board members, not to the audience or staff. This is the board's time to listen to you. The board does not reply to questions during this time. Speakers will be judged out of order should they engage in personal attacks, use profanity, or abusive language. We ask that the audience please be respectful of the speaker's time by not applauding, interrupting, or commenting between speakers so the board may clearly hear each speaker's comments. Please leave any written comments or information you would like us to have with the board clerk. And with that being said, we'll call up our first two speakers. We have Nicholas Fisher and Timothy Mack. Oh, what? Oh, I didn't have that in front of me. You want to do pledge? Sure. Okay. Let's do pledge. Whoops. Let's do.
Please stand for a moment of silence, and then I'll lead us in the pledge. Let us pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. So coming up, we have Nicholas Fisher and Timothy Mack.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I know that you are not supposed to comment during my presentation, so I'm going to ask you to consider just raising your hand. This is a quiz, okay? The first question is,
I will tell you, we probably won't raise our hands either,
Oh.
but go ahead.
I'm just surprised. Well, consider this a rhetorical question. How many of you have ever met a tax increase you really liked? Okay, that was number one. Number two, how many of you have ever had to hold two jobs to pay the bills, your household, and to feed your family? That's part of the situation we're facing with the Montgomery County Public Schools. I don't know if you listened to the December 5th school board meeting where employees talked about the situations they're working in. If you have not, I would like to strongly encourage you to do so. There are some employees who've not had a raise for 10 years, which to me is extremely significant, given that the rate that they were dealing with was $11 per hour. The situation facing many teachers, custodians, bus drivers, administrative aides, and other staff is they're working 2 and 3 jobs just to survive. And in fact, many of the teachers, who many feel are more reasonably paid, are in the same condition. If you want to buy a house in the city of Blacksburg, architects estimate that you have to have a salary of $90,000 plus in the current conditions. The actual cost of the Montgomery County Public Schools proposed budget in terms of the tax increase is 27 cents per day. 27 cents per day. If you look at the real cost per hour for a student, it's $10.16. And I want to come back to this in a couple of minutes. The reason that this budget is being proposed is we're having difficulty attracting teachers because our salaries are not competitive relative to Roanoke, Richmond, and surrounding areas. And this is a competitive business. There's a shortage of teachers. There's a shortage of nurses. There's a shortage of other key staff. To be in a situation where we're having trouble finding people to be custodians, we're having trouble finding people to be bus drivers, we're having trouble finding substitute nurses because people say, I can go to Pulaski County or somewhere else and get better pay. The reality is, if we want to do critical things like provide mental health services, make sure that student needs are being met, deal with the daily needs we're facing in the Montgomery County Public Schools, it costs money. If you want to do things like mowing the lawns, you need mowers that work. There are a number that don't. If you wanted to have trucks to plow the streets, you have to have those available. I want to point out only 2 more things. For those of you concerned about return on investment, public schools have an 8-to-1 return on investment. For every dollar you invest in a K-12 education for one child, over that person's working life, you get an 8-to-1 return on investment. I appreciate your time and hope you will consider this.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Mack, followed by Vincent Corabay-Sirio, I believe. Hope I didn't mess your name up too badly.
Good evening. My name is Tim Mack. I live in this county. I am a former administrator at Virginia Tech, and I am a former graduate studies dean of 2 different universities, retired now. I make decisions based on data, not on emotions, not on political parties, but based on data, and I wanted to talk to you about some data today. Data was just published today from Atom.com. Atom is ATTOMDATA.com, is a national repository of property tax information where you can look up the information county by county and compare counties. So I thought I'd give you some comparative data. They published the effective tax rate, which is the average tax rate for an individual or corporate taxpayer in the county. The effective property tax rate for Montgomery County, this is in dollars, is 0.57. For Pulaski County, which has Radford University in it, would be somewhat similar, 0.49. For Franklin County, 0.39. For Wythe County, which has a community college in it, and Abington, which is a nice city, 0.36. For Carroll County, 0.42. 0.34. For Roanoke City, 0.92. The Roanoke Metropolitan Service Area has approximately 250,000 people living there, and our county has 100,000 in it. With less people, you'd need a smaller government. And so that's a 40% change. We're at 40% of their population. If you looked at 40% of 0.92, you'd get 0.37. Every piece of data that I look at suggests that Montgomery County should reduce its tax rate rather than increase it. Now, the next thing I'm going to say is people shouldn't get angry or happy about data. Data are data. You do not look for data that conforms to your opinion. Your opinion should conform to data. That's why we have data. It helps us make objective decisions. And that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to thank you. I'm not going to abuse anybody here because as a former administrator, I took a lot of it myself. Thank you and have a nice evening.
Thank you. And next up, we have Mr. Corbisirio.
Corbisiero.
Yay.
You have to buy a vowel. before you can say it.
Okay, and followed by Laura Murcia. Okay?
Good evening, Madam Chairman and board members. I'm here in opposition of the increase of the property taxes. I think we're all aware that life has gotten more expensive, particularly post-pandemic. We see it at the grocery store and our energy costs. And certainly that propagates into the cost of running the government. I share the gentleman's sentiment, though. I believe we can work smarter with less government. And just like we do in our own households, we don't really have the ability to increase revenues, so we have to cut expenses. So I'm here to compel you to take a look at where we can make budget cuts and save the homeowners' costs. You know, those of us that are, and by the way, I am in Christiansburg in Montgomery County, been here since 2007. But I think homeowners are penalized. We make the investments. You know, our assessments are higher, even though we're not necessarily selling. But we'd like to see a smarter government and better use of those tax dollars. Obviously, public safety, those areas are more firm and fixed, but I think there's room to actually cut the budget and also just, again, work smarter and not necessarily raise taxes. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And now we have Ms. Murcia, followed by Patrick Melander.
Taxes. Where I live in the area, like mine area, we have the following provided. We need road upgrade, graded and proper paving, lighting and drainage, signage and sidewalks. We need garbage collections to our homes. We need town water and sewer systems to all of our homes as well. We need upgraded fire hydrants that we don't even have. Our house could burn down before they get to us. And that's a lot of money. Okay. We need public transportation because people like me that will soon not be able to drive to town to get our needs. We need better cell services so we can call 911 for better 911 system. We need a fire department to protect our homes. We also need a better mail system, a mailing department that will make sure that all of our mail is delivered to our home and not our neighbor's house. We need a grocery store, but sometimes we can't even make it up to the grocery store. We would need a park friendly with activities included for our children. We need also, the big one too, is we need mental health group homes, including assisted living homes in our community to keep our mentally ill individuals in our community. We do not have that. It's very lacking. And when you send your individuals outside of the group home, out of the community, you don't know if they're being treated right or abused. We need school systems included. We need fair property taxes, not overrated, that we have now. We need another fair cable company because Comcast is too much. They charge too much. It gets bad when your Comcast is more than your actual grocery bills. And in closing, in raising our taxes, you agree to provide us all upgraded, I listed above, to all the citizens in our area, like mine. The full cost of these improvements are not to be charged to the property owners, but to our property owners, but our property taxes will cover it full cost. Thank you.
And Ms. Marcia, could you state your name and the part of the county that you are from?
My name is Laura Mercier, and I am from Ellet Valley and Montgomery County.
Thank you.
And we don't have these items that I've listed.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Mr. Melander, followed by Joanne Price.
Thank you, Supervisors. My name's Patrick Melander. I live here in Christiansburg. I think the 5-cent increase is inappropriate. Really, any increase is inappropriate. We have a bad economy, rampant inflation. Companies are cutting costs and laying off employees, yet governments, including our county, continue to increase budgets rather than find ways to cut costs and save like the rest of us have to do. They get to conveniently raise taxes or print and borrow money from the central bank, which burdens us all with the hidden and heavy tax of inflation. I understand there's a property value reassessment every 4 years, and after last year's reassessment, you lowered the rate from 89 cents to 70 cents due to inflation of property values. But what happens at the next reassessment if inflation continues? Will we get an up and down roller coaster of rate changes? Or worse, what if the Fed contracts the money supply and we experience rapid deflation before the next reassessment? I think it would be much more fair to lock in property values at the time of sale with none of these periodic reassessments that punish us because of the Fed's destruction of our currency. A wise American once said, if government can forcefully take your property from you, is it really your property to begin with? Does government really own all the land and we're just renters, with property taxes being the rent? And another wise American said, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issuance of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all their property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Joanne Price, followed by Anna Vajayan.
Good evening, Joanne Price, Blacksburg, Virginia. The last couple of speakers actually said a great introduction for what I'm going to say. Today, people are absolutely worried about how they will pay for necessities, including food, a roof over their heads, tax increase, and pay off the national debt in the future. And now there's a 7% increase on property that they own or rent. Yes, it will show up in their rent. Renters are not excluded because the owners of those properties are going to pass on that increase to those renters. You know, I have a business in Christiansburg, and I have noticed that there is a significant number of new faces of homeless people on the streets of Christiansburg. And these are new homeless. Now, I do offer coffee. They can come in and get coffee, so I get an opportunity to talk to them. And a lot of these people are working, they have jobs. They are the working poor. And they're extremely concerned about how they are going to make it. The government used to pay off its debts. So how did we get to be a nation in debt? How did inflation cause our dollar to buy so much less? And how does the government collect taxes from us now? When the Constitution was first signed, taxes are unconstitutional. Property ownership is a God-given right, therefore it cannot be taken away by government. And as the gentleman said before, we don't own that property, because if we fail to pay the property taxes, we get evicted, and the government, the county, takes our property. So we're just renting it and maintaining it. We are not really citizens based on the Constitution. Now, things are really messed up economically, and I'm going to talk about the budget. I didn't know that these were going to be separated, but I'm going to talk about the budget because there are some things that can be done to ease this burden. And it's a way of thinking. Government is the only entity that doesn't go by a fixed income. They spend, spend, spend. Why? Because they have the, as was mentioned in the budget, they can impose taxes upon the people. And this is exactly what it looks like in Montgomery County. We've got Virginia Tech on one side, we got government on the other side. Virginia Tech pays 0 taxes on their properties. And then we got the government over here. The government pays 0 taxes on the buildings that they house and use. In the middle, we're sandwiched between these two monsters. They employ the most amount of people, 13,851 for government and 13,000 employees for Virginia Tech. And there is the taxpayer, right there, sandwiched between those. And at the top, we have inflation, and at the bottom, we have taxation. So where does the taxpayer go? And this is the situation of the taxpayer, not only in Montgomery County, but in this country. So I am saying that we should not increase taxes at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Vijayan, followed by Wayman Pack.
Hi, my name is Anna Vijayan, and I live in District A. I'm here to support the proposed budget and property tax rate of 75 cents per $100 assessed value. I found the following quote in the Montgomery County budget document to be enlightening. As the county's population and demand for services have grown, many departments have been managing increased complexity and workload with limited employees and resources. In order to continue to provide superior customer service to our citizens, we need to address the county's internal needs. Traditionally, county staff have been somewhat hesitant to ask for their true needs. Now is the time to begin addressing the identified needs and empowering employees to do their best by providing them with the staff, tools, and overall resources they need. In other words, county employees have long been asked to do more with less. And it's time to make sure the county is collecting the revenue it needs to make sure that excellent services can continue. I don't normally follow Board of Supervisor meetings closely, but I do follow the school board, and the story is the same in schools. There's nothing you can cut out of the school's budget without affecting the quality of the product. Just last year, with the tax rate cut to 70 cents per $100, the school's budget was cut dramatically, and the schools were again asked to do more with less. In informal conversations with parents, our superintendent admitted that the cuts were hard, but that if the same situation occurred again this year, things would be even worse. There's just no room to shave money from the school budget without affecting the quality of the product. As a parent of a child in public schools, I need our schools to be good. The vast majority of parents in Montgomery County rely on public schools to educate their children, and they need our schools to be good. But good schools are not just for children or for parents. Good schools are good for our county, period. They educate our future citizens. We should all want healthy schools for the future of our community. I do sympathize with those who are struggling to pay their bills. And I would support progressive property taxes, where people who own more expensive houses pay a higher tax rate, or targeted tax relief for lower-income households. But the solution is not to starve our local government of the funds it needs to pay its bills. Bills that go towards services that benefit everyone. Goods and services cost money, and these costs have gone up, just like household costs have gone up. I am personally happy to pay a little more to make sure that county services, especially our schools, are able to continue working for the people of this county. Before I finish up, I'd like to take a quick look at how big the increase we're talking about actually is. 7%. That's a one-time increase of 7% after 5 years of not increasing. That's equivalent to just 1.4% per year. That's much less than inflation, which has run about 4% per year on average over the last 5 years. It's actually quite wonderful, and I congratulate you that the county is able to keep the increase to just 5 cents after not increasing it for 5 years. I'll note too that for a person who owns a house that's worth $500,000, the increase we're talking about is less than $21 a month. That should be totally doable for someone who owns a $500,000 house. In summary, the 75-cent tax rate is needed to keep our county moving in the right direction. We need the county and the schools to be able to continue providing the services that make this county a great place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Pack is next, followed by Harlan Lustgarten.
Wayman Pack, living in Reiner, Virginia, and once again, I stand before you. This board finds itself as a three-way intersection. You, as our duly elected representatives, have a very important decision to make. Will you turn left to increase the tax rate to 75 cents per $100? Will you stay where you are and leave the tax rate as it is? Or will you proceed right and do what few elected officials today seem to be willing to do? That is working together and coming to a compromise on a very important decision. Our state government is once again, as it was last year, in budget paralysis and unable to agree on a final bill. There is absolutely no reasonable justification that I can find to make me believe that the citizens of this county, whom you decided last year could not bear the 75-cent rate, have had a large enough increase in their financial status to be able to afford your proposed increase this year. It's fine to want to be able to do all the things in the proposed budget, but we have to realize that we all have wishes that we are not able to afford. My family has many of its own. I don't know about others in the county who are on fixed income, but my pension payment will not increase for as long as I live. But my health benefit costs continue to rise. It would be nice to go on a cruise or visit foreign places, but that's just not in our budget. We all have to make sacrifices and set priorities when we look at what resources are available to us. My family is not able to compel citizens of the county to provide funds to allow us to do all the things that we would like to do, as you have the power of doing. We make do with the finances that we have and doing without things that we would like to have. Governments are somewhat like businesses. Look at the budget items and apply a simple business rule. What is the ROI, or return on investment? If there is little to no benefit to the county, either reduce the amount budgeted or remove that item altogether. Those savings are funds that could be redirected to our road repairs and or upgrades to the 911 system that would benefit the entire county. That being said, I realize that my family also does not have the responsibilities that you do, such as providing services to the county, as well as making our county a place that more families and businesses would like to call home as we grow into the future. Therefore, I am once again respectfully requesting this board to look at the citizens' financial situation and compare it to last year. compromise, come to a consensus that will benefit our county without placing an undue burden on the citizens in the process. Good Lord willing, there'll be enough economic growth not only in this county but the entire country before the next budget process that will enable our citizens to be able to afford a higher rate that will allow you to revisit some of the items that may not be funded in this cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Mr. Lustgarten, followed by Ivan Pisano-Franco.
Arnold and Lustgarten Switchback Road, which is above Vickers Switch. I came to speak to support the 75-cent assessment. I moved here about 44 years ago, and I see the county grow. And this is part of the growth. We have to have a school system that we can all be proud of, that people want to come to live here and stay here and invest in the county. I just received county water. Very happy with that. Nice, and a fire hydrant in the house next door. So I'm glad for that. So that's a progress. I see the roads being taken care of. The tax I would oppose would be a county sales tax. That I think is a regressive tax. 75 cents is a value tax. I don't mind paying that. It's based on value, on what I own, and everybody has the same basis for that. So it's not based on income, it's based on ownership. And that's what I wanted to tell you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Pisano-Franco, followed by Matthew Pickett.
Hello, my name is Ivan Pisano-Franco, and I've resided in Montgomery County for over 19 years. And I just wanted to say that now's the time to show the people that you truly care about them. Now people are paying attention to every single thing that politicians are doing, local governments are doing. You know, it's not the problems in D.C. that we're facing, it's the potholes in the streets that we're worried about. It's everything that's local, so we got to start local with our issues. And as November gets closer, people are paying attention to who are they voting for, what they're doing, and what they truly do for this society and our community. And which side of history are you going to be on? Are you going to be the good side or the bad side? That's really all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Pickett, followed by Kim Bowman.
Matthew Pickett, Reiner. Long time ago, I graduated from Blacksburg High School the year it fell down, and I had a fantastic trade and technical education in which when I went to college, I actually knew more than we were being taught when I was paying to go to college. When I graduated, I think some publication even listed us as the top 500 high school, which we're not in Richmond, we're not in New York, we're not in DC, we're not in LA. Like, it's pretty cool. And for me to stand up here and to not support a 75-cent assessment would be me pulling the ladder up behind me. My entire career, which I work in film and television, started with Michael Kaler's class in Blacksburg High School. And without that, some of those things that I learned in that class that I still use today, I wouldn't have. That was a professional gift. I cannot express to you how valuable that was to me. I went back to his class for 7 years to speak. I'm an instructor at the University of Virginia's College at Wise because that far southwest part of Virginia gave me a lot of opportunity, but it all stemmed in the public school systems and what we invested in prior to that. There's only one member of the board at that point who was still serving, or who was serving at that point. But either way, somebody had vision enough to have those trade and technical classes. But that basically means that, in my opinion, for a community to be successful, for people like me to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to come back. I'm not going to live in Maine because I work there. I'm not going to live in Nashville because I work there. I'm not going to live in Atlanta because I work there. I'm going to move back to Montgomery County. We've got to be able to do that. For new students who say, I've got a job right after Virginia Tech, hey, you know, I'm going to stick around for a little while. Hey, things are kind of great. Roads are pretty nice. Parks are pretty nice. Schools are pretty nice. Maybe I stay. Maybe I increase the population and put my capital into this county because I love it, just like I do. If we choke it off through attrition, we just slowly sort of squeeze everything. We have our teachers that are struggling to live in the communities that they teach. I think that's a problem. We may not see it in 3 or 4 years, but eventually we will, and be a very, very sad day for me when I'm 40 with kids, for them to have a worse education outlook than I had. That's not what we're supposed to do as parents. It's not supposed to do as community leaders. The idea is the next generation has better opportunities, right? So I'm in favor of this. I don't see any other way to do this, specifically because I have worked in the public school system. I am a film festival judge for the VHSL. I was a coach for Blacksburg High School. It was not uncommon for 30-hour days, which ended up being $2 an hour. And because we were good and we went to states, it's an entire month I didn't get paid for, because of course the stipend does not increase. That is a lot of money, and I was expected to have a level of mastery, and I am expected to have a level of mastery when I teach in public education. Of course, we're not being paid for that. We're basically volunteering. And just on that, I'm not expecting to be paid a full-time wage when I do those kinds of things. But I know that teachers are in the same situation. That's very difficult for them, because if I'm not getting a stipend that even comes close to minimum wage, they're probably struggling too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Bowman, followed by Angela Akers.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me speak this evening. I volunteer at, by the way, I'm from Christiansburg, and I volunteer at a local nonprofit here in Christiansburg that feeds and clothes and provides other resources for more than 1,000 individuals each month. We also provide to other area food programs throughout the New River Valley with our overages to make sure that none of the edible food goes to waste. And in the past year, we have experienced a 200% increase in clients. And we continue to see an average of 34 new families every month. And I'm keenly aware that there is a crisis playing out across America. I'd like to share a few headlines from articles regarding this crisis. In food bank lines, ranks of the newly poor grow. Long lines are back at U.S. food banks as inflation hits new high. I never thought I would be standing in one of those lines. Food lines are a measure of the economy. Middle class are the new face of hunger. I feel like 50% receiving food from this pantry are middle class, Louise Martin, coordinator, says. Middle class households are struggling to put food on the table. Food pantries are essential for reducing hunger among the middle class. Buying groceries isn't just a problem for the poor. Middle class really not doing so well economically. Many thousands of formerly middle-class families are visiting food pantries for the very first time. Americans suffering at a rate rarely reached. Cost of living in the U.S. is driving millions into poverty. Essentially, folks, our government, the very people that we have chose to help us, are robbing us of the American dream. For many, it is now the American nightmare. While Americans are having to cut back their lifestyles and do without, government continues to increase spending and to grow more government in a vicious cycle of taxing and spending. Our government is creating welfare states through taxation, inflation, excessive fees, and regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Akers, followed by Alicia Vaught, sorry.
Hello, Board. My name is Angela Akers, and I live here in Christiansburg. I was reminded of Scripture today. A rebellious nation is thrown into chaos, but leaders anointed with wisdom will restore law and order. Proverbs 28. What is sad is only 44% of the voters came out to vote in this last local election. Elections have consequences. I believe the majority of this board will be the result of higher taxes for Montgomery County. I want to thank Todd and Steve for not wanting to raise the taxes. Eternal vigilance is needed to maintain our liberty. My husband, Jeff Akers, and I own our house in Montgomery County. We are taxed from the town and the county. We are all being taxed to death. My husband had to take over his mom's property that was originally his grandmother's house, just to make sure she didn't lose it to being taxed to death. I wonder how many are on a fixed budget and are hurting and struggling with taxes that couldn't be here tonight. I stand for them, and I ask not to raise our taxes. The answer is not bigger government or better systems. The answer is leaders anointed with wisdom to restore it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Vaught, followed by Bob Beard.
Good evening, Supervisors. My name is Alicia Vaught. I live in Christiansburg, Virginia, and I just have a question I wanted to ask you guys. Each of us have, I'm assuming each of us have felt the financial hard times that we've been in lately, and we've each had to take a look at our budgets and see where we can cut out the unnecessary things or the things that are of low priority. We've all had to do that because we've seen inflation skyrocket. We've seen the prices of everything skyrocket. So all of us have had to look for ways to cut back. So why can't we apply that same standard right here with the people's money? Why does a tax increase always have to be the first thing that we think about? There are plenty of ways that we can save money, that we can take things out of the budget that maybe were not the highest priority, maybe things that we can cut back on and reduce. There's a lot of ways we can do that. One of the things we can do is start with the school systems. Collective bargaining that was sold to us, that was going to be such a great thing for Montgomery County, it's already costing us $130,000 just in attorney's fees. That's one way to cut back, to save some money. The teachers' unions are the reasons so many problems right now are happening. They were enforced coming out to get behind the lockdowns of our kids. They were behind making sure all the kids were masked up. They were forcing the bioweapon onto the teachers. These teachers' unions have not done our schools or our kids any good at all. They called us racist if we didn't agree with them. You know, remember that? They used body bags in protest to make sure we didn't open our schools back up. They advocated for porn in our libraries. Collective bargaining, the expenses that go along with that, they can get cut. What about the DEI offices and the officers? The DEI situation that's happening in school right now, it's a direct harm to our kids. Direct harm. It's racism. It's teaching our kids to hate themselves, to hate their God, hate their country. That's harming our kids. Why are we harming our kids? Why are we paying for the harm and destruction of our families by continuing to fund these school budgets? I don't know if you guys have noticed, but every year the school budgets get up. They go up every year. Yet our kids are failing. Only 2 out of 10 minority children know how to do math. Only 1 out of 10 minority children can read. That's failing our kids. So the more funding equals the more failing of our kids. So I would just encourage everyone to please look at the things that we can cut and not raise the taxes on our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Beard, followed by William Palmer.
Good evening, Bob Beard. Thank you for, Christiansburg. Thank you for allowing me to speak and address you guys tonight regarding the budget. You know, we're talking about the 75 cents, but, we haven't, no one's really talked about, you guys already got $6 million in new money. We said, we tried to have a neutral tax rate and went from 89 cents down to 70, but yet that still generated $6 million new dollars in county revenue. There's a 304-page report, a budget. What was not in there is who and how is going to pay for this other than a tax increase. Yes, our county tax revenue grew by close to $6 million, but we want more money. In the budget, there was nothing about the economy, the unemployment, the workplace, county growth, or personal prosperity. The mindset at the federal government level, this reminds me of this federal government level. Let's raise taxes and print more money. What can go wrong? The voters will be happy doing nothing. They won't mind being tax slaves or slaves to inflation. So I did some research and wanted to see what the county looked like. I said none was in there. So what is the poverty rate for Montgomery County? It's 27.6%. Okay, so that means that close to 25,000 people in our county of 100 live below the poverty level, and we want to raise taxes on those guys. Okay, what does the poverty rate for Montgomery County compared to the Virginia? It's 170% higher than the state of Virginia. Okay, so how is Montgomery County compared to the U.S.? It's 115% higher than the rest of the U.S. Some other additional research. The average median income in this county is $65,000. Okay, let's see here. One thing else I want to pull. I'm sorry. So also, we talk about expenses and so forth. So I pulled up some typical expenses. This is for Montgomery County, okay? So to have 2 adults in a household and only one working with 2 children, the food costs you got a budget for is $12,781. So it's over $1,000 a month you spend on groceries alone, okay? For housing, it has close to $16,000. That's still, to me, that's underestimated. How do you have live in a house, rent or own, in a house for $1,500 a month? That doesn't make any sense. You're spending only $15,000 on transportation. Your cable bill is $2,000 a month. Let's see here. So in order to be successful, you have to have a household income of over $80,000 to make that work. Just to pay the typical expenses along those lines. Guys, we've got, the money's there already, so there shouldn't be a tax increase. We need to figure ways to make do with what we've got and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Palmer, followed by Jackie Jones.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. William Palmer. I live in Christiansburg, Virginia. I came to this evening not intending to say anything, so I didn't really have anything printed out. Really, what I have is a question. Who likes seeing taxes raised? I absolutely hate it. And the government is very, very bad at actually managing money at all. So why would we give it more? Use what you have and make it work. It's worked over and over again. We got families in this room right now that have to do the same thing. They have to make it work with what they have. If we can do it, you guys should absolutely be able to do it. The government, just as an example, I'm prior military, so I learned at a very young age that the government is very, very bad at budgeting money. I had to inventory a box one time, and I had the receipt for the item. It was $400 for a hammer that I could buy for $20 at Lowe's. Right then, I was a 20-year-old kid, and I was disgusted with how the government manages money. 7 cents doesn't sound like, or 7% doesn't sound like a lot. Where does it stop? 7 cents now, or 7% now? What happens next year and the next year, and the next year. People can't even afford to put food on their table for their kids. You got people working multiple jobs. I have 3. I have 3 young kids. I'm married. My kids will never go to a public school because I refuse to put them in that mess. I will homeschool my children, and nobody will take that from me. They will never see the inside of a school because of what goes on in schools. My 5-year-old, my wife had to pull her out of the Christiansburg library because of some of the books my wife found in the children's section in Montgomery County Library, in Christiansburg. That should not happen. That is ridiculous on every single level. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Jones, followed by Laura Purcell.
Hello. My husband and I moved here. We retired from Georgia. I was an educator there. We moved here about 2.5 years ago. You guys may remember the crazy real estate at that time. Prices were, they were just crazy on real estate. They may still well be. Everybody was having to pay far more than the asking price in order to get there. My husband and I put like 4 contracts, all of them above asking, one $100,000 above asking, and we still did not get the house. So anyway, we're still very happy here. We paid a lot more for our house than it was probably worth or that we wanted to pay, but we did. We were surprised when we came about how very much greater the taxes are here than in Georgia. We pay on a lot of different things we pay taxes on that we didn't pay there. Our real estate taxes are quite a bit higher, in large part because they had some good senior, not discounts, I don't know what you call them, but for seniors, they acknowledged that some tax break was appropriate. Here you do have one, but you have to literally, I think, own nothing, be on Social Security only, and have no other income in order to participate in those things. So then last year, you did the reassessment, or year before last, I don't know what. Our home increased in value over 30%. Over 30%. And I realized that, and I think many other folks did too. I've heard horror stories of people who increase even more than that. And I understand that you then reduce the rate to help those folks that had just experienced such significant increases. However, we still had a tax increase. I mean, I didn't compensate sufficiently. There was still a lot more. Our tax bill increased hundreds of dollars. So I've heard people talk about different populations that are especially hurt by these taxes. One that I haven't heard discussed much, and one I'm a member of, are seniors. There are many seniors in this county that are basically, they're on fixed incomes. This would create a hardship in their lives. I would assume that many of those experienced increased assessments as well. And those two things are inextricably linked. So I would imagine their tax bill has increased too. And again, they're on fixed incomes. They simply don't have the money. Many of them are relying exclusively on Social Security for their incomes. So I would just say that I would oppose the tax rate increase.
Ms. Jones, can you state what part of the county you're from?
I live in Christiansburg, not in the city, but it's right outside the city.
Okay. Next up is Ms. Purcell, followed by Chris Waltz.
Hi, my name is Laura Purcell. I live in District F. Last year, when your board chose the 70-cent tax rate, this severely affected the school budget. Superintendent Bragan and his staff had to work extremely hard to find creative workarounds to minimize the impact. The success of that is debatable. This year, I believe that the school division did a really good job providing a detailed and transparent budget, more detailed than I have ever seen them before. And our objective is to do what's best for the community in presenting a budget like that to you. I also believe that educating children is pretty important. Nothing brings a community of neighbors together like a public school. And in this time of economic stress, I think any reductions to this service would really be a negative impact on the community. To me, it's worth investing my tax dollars so that my neighbor's kid or a kid on the opposite end of the county can get an education that will prepare them to be the next generation of people who live and work and serve their community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Waltz.
Chris Waltz, still live in Christiansburg. The proposed rate increase, government loves to take people's money and waste it. And there's a lot of waste in government, from the people you pay to administer things like county supervisors and superintendents of schools. They get paid well over six figures, and I don't see them doing a great job, or we wouldn't be here today. You all never like to cut things. You just like to raise taxes. Now, last year it came out neutral, but it was still an increase, as the lady before me said, for most people, because the reassessments were ridiculous. And, that's another thing. You hire incompetent people to do jobs. Maybe if you got good people to do jobs, things wouldn't be so screwed
I'm
up.
sorry, but please don't deliver personal attacks towards staff.
It's
Go
called
ahead.
free speech, Ms. Biggs. As long as I'm not using provoking words or gestures, it's perfectly legal. Thank you. Again, when they did the real estate taxes, they said that I had a regular roof on my house. I had a metal roof. I had upgraded it. They didn't even catch that. The time before that, they said I had 4 storage buildings in my yard that hadn't been there in over 10 years. So that's why I say incompetent people that get hired, because not seeing
I'm going to
metal
say
roof.
again that please do not attack
That's
staff
nice.
members.
Thank you.
Speak to us.
No, I am speaking to you. I didn't mention any names. But again, you need to hire people who know what they're doing. And that's not a personal attack, it's a fact. You have people that you hire that don't know what they're doing. And I'm sorry that you don't understand that.
Please, could you direct your comments to us
I am directing it right to you.
and leave the staff out of it?
I have a right to free speech, Ms. Biggs.
But we asked at the
So
beginning
the-
that it would be directed to the board, not staff.
I'm not directing it to staff. I'm complaining about staff. And the fact that you don't understand that, I can't help you with that, Ms. Biggs. I'm sorry. But again, you're raising taxes to waste our money. They're estimating that disabled veterans are going to get about a 1.75% COLA increase. That's a lot less than what you're trying to give your staff. What was it, 5%? 7%? You need to not waste money. Deal with the money that you have, and if maybe you can start doing a good job with the money you have, we might be willing to give you more. Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
and Ms. Biggs, you should probably look at that Constitution sometime.
Would anyone else, those are all the folks that we have signed up. Would anyone else like to come forward at this time during this public hearing about the proposed tax rate? Please come forward, okay? And state your name and where you reside in the county.
I'm Linda Majors. I live in Blacksburg in the county, and I also have property in Reiner. What I want to say is I appreciate all the board members here, all the past board members, all the present board members that know and work with our county employees to try to make the best county possible. And I know that you know a lot more than the public does about what needs to happen for the good running of the county, as well as, the overall picture. I have been involved with ag and forest districts for 35 years, so I dealt with the county in that. And I've been involved with the county supervisors as well as the county staff for the past 10 years quite intensively. I have to say that I have, at every time I've had an interaction with any of the supervisors or any of the county staff, it has been positive and, intelligent and respectful, which I really appreciate, because it doesn't have to be that way. And I know that you all, every single one of you, have the best interests of the county in your hearts. I want the tax increase. I totally respect Craig Meadows and Angie Hill, and they're professionals, and both of them advocated for the tax increase. Since 2019, there's been a 20% cost of living increase, and now we're just asking, the staff is asking for a 7% increase. We can expect the county staff and the school staff and all the other county employees to take that hit for us. Everybody has to work together and contribute to the life in our county that we all appreciate so much. If we don't, all you have to do is look at Phoenix or California and find out what housing prices are or what life is like. Again, I want to express my appreciation for the staff and all the new members of the board and all the past members of the board. And please note that with both properties, even though I don't like taxes, I am totally supportive of the 5 cent increase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Darlinda McChain. I live in the county, not in the town, and Montgomery County. And, I didn't plan on speaking, so I don't have my notes in front of me. But I know there's some fat in this budget. And just like we might not be able to go out to eat one more extra time in a month because things are harder now, I think you guys can tighten your belt too. I think one place, the collective bargaining, which we fought against and should have never passed, is a big problem. I don't have a problem with the school having money, but there's one rule, I have no idea how to change it, but we really need to do it. They give the teachers or the class, whatever, I don't know how they do it, but they get so much money a year and they baby it and baby it and baby it. And then at the end, if the rule is, if you don't spend it, you don't get it next year, that really needs to change, because what they do is then run out the last minute and waste it all so they'll get it next year. That really needs to change. I used to work in the school system. I saw so much waste. It was disgusting. And that was one of the things, and it's been in my craw for 35 years. Okay, one reason I got involved in politics, because of government waste. I can tell you another place y'all can cut back, and that's the museum. Why are they getting so much money every year between the county and the city or the town? I'm on the board for the homeless shelter. They get $12,000 a year, and the museum gets $100,000. Anyone in this room who's for this tax rate has not looked at the budget at all. And there's only one person I know of that printed the whole thing off and did read every bit of it. So they have no idea what they're talking about when they say we're robbing the school or whatever. You guys need to work within the budget, just like we have to. No tax increase.
Thank you.
I'm Johanna Hicks. I live in Christiansburg, and I'm speaking as a citizen of this town and Montgomery County. I pay 2 taxes. I pay one to the town, I pay one to Montgomery County. And in the town, when we pay this tax, we're supposed to take care of the public safety. They take care of our quality of life, and the majority of the things that need to be required to be able to have things running in the town. The town pays for the SROs inside our town limits. They pay for the police officers in the town. They pay for our parks, recreation. They pay for all the expenses with the aquatic center. They pay for everything with the roads, the storm water, and even the paving and all the other things that have to do with the town of Christiansburg and a lot of the things that we do. When it comes down to the town, they have to look at their budget and make sure that they take care of all those things that you guys are not covering, even though we still pay a county limit, a tax. I wasn't planning to speak today, but I am seeing what's going on in the county and the town, and with all the people that are living here. We're definitely struggling. We're struggling paying for the bills that we have. We're struggling paying for increasing the taxes and food and gas and everything else that we have going on in our lives. And I think one of the things that we can do is definitely figure out how you guys can cut in some of the ways to figure out if you can cut some of the things in the budget, or figure out how you can do some of those things later on, or whatever you have to do to figure it out, because our job is not to tax people today. And for all the people that want to volunteer to pay more money, there is sponsorships, there is all kinds of stuff that people can pay money to, and the county doesn't have to pay for that, or the towns don't have to pay for those things. So that can alleviate some tax increases. I appreciate you guys' job and everything that you're doing for us. I appreciate that you take care of our schools, and appreciate what you're doing here tonight, because I know it's not an easy job to do for every single one of you guys. And so I am grateful that you're here, and I hope you make the right decision, because not just increasing taxes is going to affect a lot of the homeowners or the people that own properties here, but especially the people are having to rent, because what do you think is going to happen if you increase the real estate tax on homeowners or the people that own these homes? They're going to have to pass those tax increases to the rest of the people that live in those properties. So think about that too, and thank you so much for everything you're doing here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward? Come on up.
My name is Sharon Brockman, and I live in Christiansburg. So nothing happens in a vacuum, and this tax increase would be no different. So just this week, I've read that Appalachian Power is wanting to raise its rates by 5%, and that is by no means a done deal. But even before that, I've heard and read lots of people who had very high electric bills, and that 5% increase in electricity rates plus another 7% in, or 7% in taxes, those things add up after a while. And it might not sound like a lot. It's only another $100 a year, or only another couple $100 a year. Well, you keep adding that, $100 for taxes and $200 for electric, and electric's gonna be every month. Not to mention that, some days I leave my house early in the morning and I drive past the gas station, and I come back in the afternoon, it's gone up 20 cents a gallon. Now, and it never seems to go back down as quickly as it rises. And that's just, part of that's life. We understand it. Things are going to be more expensive. But this is not the time to raise taxes on people. As it is worth restating, those assessments were really high. And I don't know anybody who had any resolution with Board equalization. And I know several people who went. And we haven't yet paid taxes on that. So we're already going to be paying higher taxes, even if you don't change the rate. Because last year's taxes were all based on the old assessments. So it's going to be, I've been holding my breath on what that tax bill is going to look like anyway, even before you all consider raising it. Everybody deserves to be paid well for what they do. We all want good things for our kids. That's yeah, we all want good things for our children. We want a good place to live. You know, Virginia, relative to states around us, are losing population, and we are losing it to lower tax states. We're losing it to places, to localities that do not charge as much. And so, you know, Montgomery County is kind of an anomaly. We still stick out, and yes, that's because we have a major state university, but, and I'm not trying to turn this into some kind of town and gown thing, but if you pull Virginia Tech out, and I know that changes the picture of a lot of things, but we look a whole lot more like those counties surrounding us. And we're not, you know, if I heard somebody say the median income is $65,000, well, that's higher than I was expecting it, but I bet if you pull out the university component, that would bring our average income down, our median income down. And that's the folks who are really going to feel the impact of a 5-cent tax increase. So I also thank you for what you do, and I appreciate that it's not an easy task, but please weigh this heavily. Think about it and consider it very strongly before you raise our taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else? Come on up.
Good evening, Board. I'm Shelley Maycock. I live in Christiansburg. And I'd like to say that I support this increase because it makes up for decreases in the past. And we've heard a lot of strange misinformation about this county tonight. And I want you to know that our public schools and our public services are important to keeping the quality of life in this area. People who don't want to pay taxes shouldn't call 911. They shouldn't drive on the roads if they don't want to pay for them. We have to keep these things up. So thank you for looking out for our children and our future. If we don't educate our kids, we will not have a strong economy in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come up? Come on up.
Christine Waltz, Christiansburg, Virginia. You all kept saying that there's population growth going on. I want to read from you to you from the census. In April 2020, your census was 99,719. In July of 22, the estimate was 98,826. In July of 2023, it was 98,666. That's a decline. It's not growing, it's getting smaller. I was hoping I wouldn't have to come up and speak to you at all, to be honest. I'm not like my husband. I don't like coming up and hollering at people. I understand your job is incredibly difficult. It's hard, but I have to agree with a lot of the people. I don't understand why there is not a line-by-line look at every single thing to see where you can find savings. You can't tell me that the guy who's making $200,000 a year needs a 5% COLA. You just can't. It's a lot different because there is a person down on the bottom who's making $10,000, and their 5% COLA is going to go a lot less farther. Like I said, I do understand there are custodians and there are bus drivers, and these people probably do need a pay increase. The people at the top, though, I don't know that they necessarily do, and you're talking about a straight across the board COLA. I mean, the whole entire point of having department heads is for them to make difficult decisions and maybe have difficult discussions where you say, hey, this year you don't get. Every single person in this community is struggling with the economy. As somebody pointed out, we're going to get electric bills. There's going to be other things that are going to happen, and we're going to have to increase our budget, and we have nowhere else to do. And you're going to increase this too, and it's going to be a vicious cycle. I told some of my friends who are business owners, I'm like, if you increase taxes, what happens is I go out to eat less. Guess what? You collect less meals tax because I'm going out to eat less. So there has to be some happy medium. I was kind of, like I said, I was kind of hoping, because at the last meeting there was like, hey, don't freak out. 5 cents is probably not where we're going to land. But it's pretty clear this is where we're landing. And I just don't understand. I mean, last year it was like, hey, we got extra money to go build lots of parks everywhere, and hey, we can go ahead and we can cut the merchant's tax. And oh, what a difference a year makes. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward at this time to address the tax rate? Okay. Seeing no one, then we'll close this public hearing. And at this time, I will call our second public hearing to order for the purpose of receiving citizens' comments on the county's advertised proposed budget. Oh, you want a break? Okay. I think some of our board members would like a break, so we'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll be right back with the second public hearing. Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order, and at this time, we're going to go ahead and call our second public hearing to order for the purpose of receiving citizens' comments on the county's advertised proposed budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. Rules for the first public hearing will apply for this public hearing also. I will call the name of the first speaker and the next speaker on the list who should come forward and be prepared to speak. After all the names are called, other members from the audience may come forward to speak. Please come to the podium and state your name and area of the county where you reside. You will have 4 minutes to speak. At the end of 3 minutes, a yellow reminder light will go off on the box on the podium. At 4 minutes, a red light will appear signaling your time is up. And we do have some folks that signed up for this. And our first two, we have Joanne Price, and then we have Ivan Pisano Franco.
Joanne Price, Blacksburg, Virginia. And I want to talk about the budget. Things are awfully messed up economically. The financial system itself is collapsing all around. So we as individuals have to cut back on non-essentials. So why is this budget increasing in most areas? The role of government is to ask the question, is this good for citizens, for their tax dollars? The Virginia Constitution, Article 1, Bill of Rights, Section 2, says clearly that the people are the source of power. Therefore, we are the ones that should approve the budget. We are the ones that should actually go in and look at and know what is happening in the budget. As elected officials, your responsibility is to know every line item in that budget and why it's there, and then make a determination whether or not it is necessary. It is not the job of elected officials, hired officials who work in government to do that job. Remember Obamacare? They never read the bill. As a financial advisor, I had to read all 2,000 pages because I had to take a test on it. They didn't even know what was in it, and they passed it. And look at the devastation that has happened before. Do you know what's in that budget? Fundamentally, there's flawed thinking with budgeting, the budgeting process. I've taught government accounting in the federal government, and there is a mentality that I must use it or lose it. So there's a spin down as we approach the end of the budget cycle, the budgeting year. And there are warehouses around this country full of high price, high items that are being stored because they cannot be legally sold. And I've been in those warehouses. That's all taxpayer money. That waste filters down to local government because I've worked in local government and I've seen the exact same things. Government tends to feed itself. It protects itself. There are some ways that this budget can be cut. I've gone through the budget. General fund should be the same as it was last year, no increase. Why? Because budgeting says that I am going to do more with less. We understand that things are going up, but that just means that I need to become more creative. I need to find ways of solving the problems differently. And that's called improvement. I sent an email to all of you and I recommended that everybody in government, especially director levels, management levels on down, should be trained in Lean Six Sigma. Everybody in corporate America is trained in that, in the management level, because it's efficiencies and quality. And our taxpayers deserve that from our government. General administration, 46.71% increase. That's $166,413. Why are we hiring or adding an HR generalist, full-time employee, just to do retention incentives and development costs such as tuition reimbursement? Public information, cut that 18.2%. For a multimedia specialist, $74,531. Finance, you can cut that 11.61% increase. Senior accountant and purchasing technician. Find efficiencies to reduce the workload. This will be great because if you
Your time is up, but thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Pizzanzo Franco. I don't believe I see him. So we'll move to Mr. Beard, followed by Mr. Palmer.
Good evening, Bob Beard, live here in Christiansburg. Again, thanks for having this opportunity. I've been speaking to some of you, and a couple of you said I need to kind of really do a deep dive into some particular points and so forth. And as we look at this budget, where can we adjust, or what questions do we need to ask when we try to evaluate the $12 million increase or $6 million on a local level? The MCPS, and we've heard people tonight say, well, there's a budget cut last year. We've been through this for the last 3 months. There was no budget cut. There was no budget cut. You guys increased the budget for MCPS for the last 12 years. They've had a pay raise for the last 12 years. Their budget's increased 38% versus a 28% on the against inflation. Okay, so they're outperforming inflation. Okay, so like I said, MCPS teachers are just $100 away from being number one in the region on teachers' pay. There's a record number of kids applying for meal assistance. I think SNAP requests are up 15%. Proposed calendar for teachers now reporting 108 days, which is the fewest in the state. And that kind of goes back to the collective bargaining. It was done behind closed doors. We didn't get to say a thing about it. They added that. They want to add 7 more IEP teachers, which is a cost of $500,000, and we have a declining enrollment, and yet we're going to add 7 more teachers. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I talked to one of the school board members, and they said that was because they were afraid that more kids with mental health issues were going to need IEPs. That's why they wanted to add 7 more teachers. There are already 12, so we need to, those are the questions you guys need to do a deep dive and ask and figure out what's going on with those seven teachers, the additional $500,000. What are they so afraid of? They won't address loss of learning, but they'll address IEPs and DEI and all that. So on the back to on the DEI page, guys, we're spending $300,000 on on admin for DEI. For DEI. I FOIA'd Dr. Bregan. We had 200 in 4 years. We've had 325 incident reports. So 65 a year. Yet we had 1,500 in-school suspensions last year and 1,600 out-of-school suspensions. But we're spending $300,000 on DEI, which has no value. And we'll go anyways. I get a little excited here and try to cover too much. Let's see here. Also, in the last 10 years, the cost per student was in 05-06 was $8,100. We've almost doubled that. We're over $15,000 for free public education. So in 10 years, we're spending, or we doubled the cost of a free public education. Okay, and what's changed? SOL scores, truants, everything's gone down. And yet we want to double payroll, and without any ROI at all. Let's see, guys. Those are the first things that come to mind. We need to control the spending. Teachers deserve a raise, but they need to say, they're asking for a 5% raise when the state's willing to give them a 3% raise. So we got to cover both points on a local level. That doesn't make any sense to me. It should be half from the state and half from the local level, and not we're going to cover those 2 points on local level. That's why you guys that's why they're asking for a $12 million increase. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Mr. Palmer.
Good evening, William Palmer, Christiansburg, Virginia. My question really is in the budget, besides a lot of things, but I really want to focus on nearly 70% is for schools. Coming from somebody like myself, where I don't approve of the majority of what happens in public schools, I have been in the schools. I was a police officer for a few years, so I was inside the schools during school. I do not approve of much that happens in schools. Why is my tax money being used for something I do not approve of? I think, personally speaking, I would like a way to opt out of any taxes in schools, so that way my money does not go there and I have that money to educate my children in my house and be responsible for my children. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward at this time to address the budget? Okay, that was everyone that was on our list, and I'm seeing no one. Then we can go ahead and close this public hearing on the proposed budget. Thank you all for coming tonight and expressing your concerns to us. And please be safe going home.